know that death quickly overtakes the stupid man who walks along the dreadful ways of sense pleasure, whereas one who walks in accordance with the instructions of a well-wishing and worthy Guru, as also with his own reasoning, achieves his end. Know this to be true. If indeed thou hast a craving for liberation, shun sense objects from a good distance, as thou wouldst do poison, and always cultivate carefully the nectar-like virtues of contentment, compassion, forgiveness, straightforwardness, calmness, and self-control. Whoever leaves aside what should always be attempted, viz. Emancipation from the bondage of ignorance without beginning, and passionately seeks to nourish this body, which is an object for others to enjoy, commits suicide thereby. Whoever seeks to realize the self by devoting himself to the nourishment of the body, proceeds to cross a river by catching hold of a crocodile, mistaking it for a log. So for a seeker after liberation, the infatuation over things like the body is a dire death. He who has thoroughly conquered this deserves the state of freedom. Conquer the dire death of infatuation over thy body, wife, children, etc., conquering which the sages reach that supreme state of Vishnu. This gross body is to be deprecated, for it consists of the skin, flesh, blood, arteries and veins, fat, marrow and bones, and is full of other offensive things. The gross body is produced by one's past actions out of the gross elements, formed by the union of the subtle elements with each other, and is the medium of experience for the soul. That is its waking state in which it perceives gross objects. Identifying itself with this form, the individual soul, though separate, enjoys gross objects such as garlands and sandal paste by means of the external organs. Hence this body has its fullest play in the waking state. Know this gross body to be like a house to the householder, on which rests man's entire dealing with the external world. Birth, decay and death are the various characteristics of the gross body, as also stoutness, etc., childhood, etc., are its different conditions. It has got various restrictions regarding castes and orders of life. It is subject to various diseases and meets with different kinds of treatment, such as worship, insult, and high honors. The ears, skin, eyes, nose, and tongue are organs of knowledge, for they help us to cognize objects. The vocal organs, hands, legs, etc., are organs of action, owing to their tendency to work. The inner organ, Antahakaran, is called Manas, Buddhi, Ego or Chit, according to their respective functions. Manas from its considering the pros and cons of a thing, Buddhi from its property of determining the truth of objects, the ego from its identification with this body as one's own self, and Chit from its function of remembering things it is interested in. One and the same prana, vital force, becomes pran, apan, Vyan, Udan and Saman according to their diversity of functions and modifications like gold, water, etc. The 5 organs of action such as speech, the 5 organs of knowledge such as the ear, the group of 5 pranas, the 5 elements ending with the ether, together with buddhi and the rest, as also nescience, desire and action, these 8 cities make up what is called the subtle body. Listen, this subtle body, also called the link body, is produced out of the elements before they are subdividing and combining with each other, is possessed of latent impressions, and causes the soul to experience the fruits of its past actions. It is a beginningless superimposition on the soul, brought on by its own ignorance. Dream is a state of the soul distinct from the waking state, where it shines by itself. In dreams, buddhi by itself takes on the glory, with buddhi as its only superimposition, the witness of everything, and is not touched by the least work that buddhi does. As it is wholly unattached, it is not touched by any work that its superimpositions may perform. This subtle body is the instrument for all activities of the Atma, who is knowledge absolute, like the edge and the other tools of a carpenter. Therefore, this Atma is perfectly unattached. Blindness, weakness, and sharpness are conditions of the eye, due merely to its fitness or defectiveness. So are deafness, dumbness, etc. of the ear and so forth, but never of the Atma, the knower. Inhalation and exhalation, yawning, sneezing, secretion, leaving this body, etc., are called by experts functions of prana and the rest, while hunger and thirst are characteristics of prana proper. The inner organ mind has its seat in the organs such as the eye, as well as in the body, identifying with them and endued with the reflection of the Atma. Know that it is egoism which, identifying itself with the body, becomes the doer or experiencer, and in conjunction with the gunas such as the sattva, assumes the three different states. When sense objects are favorable, it becomes happy, and it becomes miserable when the case is contrary. So happiness and misery are characteristics of egoism, and not of the ever blissful Atma. Sense objects are pleasurable only as dependent on the Atma manifesting through them, and not independently, because the Atma is by its very nature the most beloved of all. Therefore the Atma is ever blissful and never suffers misery. That in profound sleep we experience the bliss of the Atma, independent of sense objects, is clearly attested by the Shruti, direct perception, tradition, and inference. Avidya, nescience, or Maya, called also the undifferentiated, is the power of the Lord. She is without beginning, is made of the three gunas, and is superior to the effects as their cause. She is to be inferred by one of clear intellect only from the effects she produces. It is she who brings forth this whole universe. She is neither existent nor non-existent, nor partaking of both characters, neither same nor different nor both, neither composed of parts nor an indivisible whole nor both. She is most wonderful and cannot be described in words. Maya can be destroyed by the realization of the pure Brahman, the one without a second, just as the mistaken idea of a snake is removed by the discrimination of the rope. She has her gunas as Rajas, Tamas, and Sattva, named after their respective functions. Rajas has its Vikshepa Shakti or projecting power, which is of the nature of an activity, and from which this primeval flow of activity has emanated. From this also mental modifications such as attachment and grief are continually produced. Lust, anger, avarice, arrogance, spite, egoism, envy, jealousy, etc. These are the dire attributes of Rajas, from which the worldly tendency of man is produced. Therefore, Rajas is a cause of bondage. Avriti or the wheeling power is the power of Tamas, which makes things appear other than what they are. It is this that causes man's repeated transmigrations and starts the action of the projecting power Vikshepa. Even wise and learned men, and men who are clever and adept in the vision of the exceedingly subtle Atma, are overpowered by Tamas and do not understand the Atma, even though clearly explained in various ways. What is simply superimposed by delusion they consider as true, and attach themselves to its effects. Alas, how powerful is the great Avriti Shakti of dreadful Tamas! Absence of the right judgment or contrary judgment, want of definite belief and doubt, these certainly never desert one who has any connection with this wheeling power, and then the projecting power gives ceaseless trouble. Ignorance, lassitude, dullness, sleep, inadvertence, stupidity, etc. are attributes of Tamas. One tied to these does not comprehend anything, but remains like one asleep, or like a stock or stone. Pure Sattva is clear like water, yet in conjunction with Rajas and Tamas it makes for transmigration. The reality of the Atma becomes reflected in Sattva, and like the sun reveals the entire world of matter. The traits of mixed Sattva are an utter absence of pride, etc., and niyam, yam, etc., as well as faith, devotion, yearning for liberation, the divine tendencies, and turning away from the unreal.